management areas of next state violence towards horses and burros. Federal agencies came to Rangers Corporation with realized slaughter, drought, and trauma. The defense assumed that livestock wars and horses down 21. Americans let burros in the wild. Horses and burros are unjustly chased by helicopters and shipped to holding facilities to build the backwards responsibility around those based on ranchers, attitudes, and randoms are physically, psychologically, and ability for service and invariably claiming the horses are overpopulated, always underpopulated numbers stored for livestock, max exaggerated, great security, monopoly, public lands by the ranchers, hunting and satellite agribusiness developers and companies and build the commercial interest even if they lose millions of dollars. Because of the horse that lies against horses, it needs to equities of 2% of research needed of domestic livestock platform. What out generation runs a condition extremely utilitarian equities are concentrated live in fear thousands. Since the slaughter was adopted against animal based on instead of programming animals, they sold to kill buyers, legal habitats, management areas over fences, restricted movement, and agencies fail for adequate water research, turn off by ranchers, horses, parents, and only rewilding can meet these parallel aims through local cooperation, consultation, case by case application to each HMA, preserves ecosystem, protects horses. Murphy 22. Rewilding, reevaluate distinction between conservation, animal welfare science, and necessary due to rapid fragmentation of habitat, natural habitats. And the risks of population become extinct in the case of American Mustang, rewilding alternative to captive environment, reasoning microfauna only available to us and many diverse ecological corridors, so also habitats and ability of wildlife to move along in habitat patches, instrumental partnership, instrumental understanding grounded in the context of taking into account situational factors. What matters is the opportunity to access to natural rights on whatever environment itself is water, the conservation, maintaining specific care for wildlife and non-specific care direct on population ecosystem. Each management area require a unique solution, case by case basis of emerging, so ecocentric, biocentric, conceptually unique. Urban management areas to promote solution difficulty, wildlife management will face and cooperation consultation are prerequisites to any meaningful environmental action. Reject all or nothing framework, ignores necessary interventions, installs movements. Murphy 22. The battle over consensus random parties projected symbolic meaning are metrically opposed to one horse management. Species exposed to divergent images in nature, most environmentalists develop adaptive management include numerous mechanisms for wild horse welfare, supplemental feeding, water or population regulation alternative. The horses go to slaughter is a view valuable to management horses through public partnership. Everyone wants better environmental guarantee how to achieve it. It's equal to unprecedented interpretation of excluded field inequity and frustration. Marriage efforts move forward into relationship or dismanage and manage efforts are pushed for North litigation does resolve the United States ought to rewild substantial tracts land on herd management errors. Rewilding entails a reorganization ecosystem that achieves self-sustainability. Only that focus on process over outcome. It dismantles Western conceptions of wildness. Literature disputes are uniqueness, have zero vagueness and ambiguity, which restores rewilding legitimacy. Murphy 22. Rewilding into a returning area back to self-sustaining ecosystem or if it's a process project and a result parallelly promotes definition of organized biota ecosystem process and new system on preferred trajectory lead to self-sustaining service with middleman management. Definitions solid like conservation goes to provide legitimacy, reorienting and discipline, not rely on cost of wildness or nature and naturalist. Human species and go to ecosystem return to preservation, unlike the working along humans interact with ecosystem compatible with self-sustaining ecological units on original parts. Must be required to achieve the desired functional outcome. The current management policy destroys self-sustainability. Historically categorized horses as invasive. Coons 23. Reason to be able to get removing wild horses, false inherent horse and no predator data shows otherwise they influence certain number of fowls, lines, limited cord predation, limited growth of wild horses, such as numbers group predation control programs are recommended. Detrimental predator interaction in the horse origin in North America, contrast to widely studied history sample. First Nation tribe legend of Aboriginal North American horses arrived through the police state were integral to pre-colonial context and culture of Great Plains. Tribes back up like aggressive control of Mustangs that based around invasive species in the U.S. Wild horses rewilding engineers replacing stuff to use the grazing, harvesting, money occupied, degrading, and restore ecosystem and rewilding creates new forms of related nature, supports biodiversity, relying on horses that act like ecosystem engineers. Murphy 22. Then rewilding on living current instinctual crisis in the case of horses and inability to perform the role of ecosystem engineers, understanding ecosystem components, racial flows, not turning back of colonies while restoring interaction in organisms, open and flexible guys and sort of more sustainable new future opportunity to reconnect and unusual society and nature view as outliers solving modern social-economic issues enhanced biodiversity as well as ecological resilience. And horses are good for the environment, multiple warrants, coons 23. Rewilding a carbon indication hand horses, thus great to back ecosystem nutrient journeys over nation and fire vegetable living forest. I think how sheep and egg acid with their hooves create water conservation mitigating method lots of those that helps increase carbon sequestration and microhabitats and many species reduces and air graze but horses graze on invasive tree grass and the role of the balance endures abundant future concrete strategy to preserve animal autonomy confront new liberal imperialist extraction owing to politics of perversality resist utilitarian extraction forefronts imperialist violence color and all 15 abundant future strategies that are diverse ways of living in the way of life the ecology environment ethics standards are outcomes so look at multiple sites of multiple worth nature sleeping colonial patterns are affected and impact on colonialism and capitalism extracting and assimilating transforming requires to conquer political strategy non-conservation modern colonialism perceived passes are designed to promote more life alternative worlds and active to utilitarianism extractive life government sustainability focus on limits involving extended what takes to the degraded active universally recognized entanglement on colonial formation worlding and brings worlds into future into being and commitment to shift as a way to enact new worlds different from integrated and imperialism self-colonialism solidarity neoliberalism recognizing animal autonomy includes non-human animals and non-restorative beings without familial social ecological networks of knowledge autonomy and trust animal life for movement and family association plan for founding dimension of journalism in the wilderness. No animal autonomy, no human intervention. Was far too integral from it setting outside. No orientation with wilderness of understood relationally. Absence of humans in relation with animals have autonomy and conditions left spatial, subjective, interjective, and social required resistance. Skip the next card for now. And here is what the literature says about substantial tracts of land and HMAs. A is a large tract of land exists on HMAs. Law enforcement education 23. BLM. This is law enforcement birds on large tract of land inside HMAs. B is substantial means large in size or number. No data as large size the large of size is greater than average as considerable sufficient large size or number. C is substantial tract of land refers to size AC AP 16 substantial tract of land region tract of land must be adequate size of 5 or range. These HMAs are BLM tracts of land. Hence 19 portion of land looked after by the BLM trickle to realize the tracts of BLM native falsified in HMAs and these HMAs are over 31 million acres. BLM 18 observed the chart below. Go back to the card. Anthropocene is classified by single static event or process completed into one to dispute any single structure. Better prosecuted Anthropocene, better prosecuted said industrialization, urbanization, capitalism, Anthropocene, so the social racial, solely a racial progress, and gross overstatement, and globalization, racism, and vast, very understanding evolves over time, racism, underground slavery, colonialism, now, same thing as contemporary police shooting over the century, decolonization, slavery, apartheid, civil rights movement, and anti-racial struggles, and over violence, legalization, subordination, racial animus, replaced by less intense forms. Over gross.
Rewilding creates new forms of relating to nature. What are those new forms of relations?
Sure. The new form of relation looks like one where the human is not as a manager of the land where we would go on and extract things from it, such as oil or rare earth minerals, etc., and say like we are the ones that are able to manage the things on the land and we should be able to access and we're the only ones that are able to access this. So
humans as not admitters of the land. The next part of the text of that you highlighted says that we should use horses as an ally in solving modern socio-economic issues. It seems like humans are still like having dominance over nature and using horse as a tool to achieve socio-economic like welfare.
I think you're misunderstanding the argument here. The argument here is not that we use horses as like the tools to get towards socio-economic solutions, but rather the argument here is that we treat horses as equal partners where we work towards socio-economic issues. It's not just limited to human issues within cities, but also it's limited to like the way how we treat nature itself, the way how we're catching horses right now through helicopter cases, and we're sterilizing them, sending them into like meat facilities where we put them into for like horse meat.
Okay, that's cool. Who does the rewilding?
Like rewilding, sure. Like, who enacts the plan? Like,
yeah.
What do you mean? Okay, sure. Like, it would say the BLM stops helicopter chases. That is part of what rewilding is, and also gives us agency of these lands to indigenous people.
Okay, so federal agency does the plan, and wait, how does it give back land to indigenous people?
Sure. It talks about the affirmative talks about how there's part. So the affirmative that would go like say go to indigenous people, go to these indigenous groups and say, hey, what do you guys want to do about this land? How should we stop like rewilding?
Okay,
we will stop our thing.
So the app consults indigenous people over like what to do on the land, but like they just stop the project. They don't return land, right?
We would. Like it would be.
No, that's fine.
The app would be in the direction of this. If you
okay,
want,
in the direction of this, sure. Great. The role of actually the topical preamps. What are the purpose of those?
It just proves that we are topical.
Okay, that's fine. How does this how is this a politic of plurality? Like if the app is topical, would you just not read this app? If the app is not topical, would you just not read this app?
No, we are trying to justify the affirmative. If the one is he stands up,
okay, but you said that we should endorse abundant futures, and also if the app's not topical, you wouldn't have read the app. So
no, we would have won. We would just pick up the tea debate, and here are the reasons why the app is topical.
So you would pick up. Okay, that's fine. That's great. Like, what does it mean to act like pluralistically?
Sure, this it is engaging in multiple different futures, not just looking through only like solely like ontology-based arguments or solely like only human extinction that way. It's rather a combination of where we take in multiple different accounts.
Solely ontology arguments. What are those arguments?
Sure, things like decolonization or like.
Okay, so we shouldn't talk about decolonization.
No, it's not that. No, the argument is not that we should never talk about decolonization. The argument here is that we should talk about these things in relation to other arguments. It is wrong to say and disavow certain indigenous struggles that are happening right now. They want to work within the government and call for demand and say we should only reject those.
Because indigenous people want demand to say we should never talk about decolonization. That's
no, that is not what the argument is. Plurality is literally in this word. It's plural. We talk about multiple futures.
That's great. The 1 and C is 2 off, and then case will be framing, i.e. the role of the ballot, and then top down. Let me know when everyone's good.
I don't. Just go. Let me know. Give me a second. shit is so big.
Yeah, you're good.
Alright, I'm good.
Cool. First off, is top reality tracts of land bar specification beyond 13 land order section part tracts and specific purpose you probably use for purposes or apply to expense of land term cannot be identified as a whole part in particular section, but whenever limits and ground. Their term it says it's new tiny app that's not connected to links into which program versus the team to dark on research from crack could be internal lease and registers, no RBS, logical control to base and can see, and no 1 or 3 speed to 1 turn out be negative, 2 units breaks debate, invites intervention and skew massive 2 hours time over blippy shells when they expect drop during assault their offense. Next up. The launch elimination grounding collection conscious that's beyond utility, grounding any attempt at save report. Decolonization is the only alternative to Curry 23 colonial project to cover sensitivity, ability to know conscious that's not individual, nutritional cycle, social, political, produce seller, as free for buddha activity during conflicts with utopian disaster, opportunity, all things are needed to settle, relegate, the permanent violence exceed and testing the free code, brutality, outside logic, require fantasy object, a murder, prevent, and conceal, and recognition, ability denied to the colonial such as, instead of our ability to colonize everything, causation cannot be reformed, unless it requires re-establishment of this sovereignty and the conscious that can be final with the colonial rule. We must find a conscious collectivity, we do not own land, time, we recognize complicity. The plan puts industry ecology presented on the back burner of rewilding. This is several colonial universalism, Durham 23, indigenous progressive in the background rewilding, sustains original indigenous practice and the stability account narrative one, let's reinforce the inclusion, participation, in local indigenous community, and rewilding in local community, rewilding are rarely been articulated any steps in the way. Indigenous community are suspicious of all rewilders and business on any agency as an alternative human rather than complement. Rewilding is Trojan horse branch to colonial land grab. As conservation efforts for NG22, rewilding sensitive indigenous people are they capable of existing power dynamics, local communities that no state over positive narrative of rewilding, greenwashing, structural inequality, lack of clear social focus on find more most support involved both the landowners operate large nature reserves, trying to give rise to landscape containing the general species and provide large habitats and less habitats to find out species, preferring to create European indigenous land as wild, deny native people's intentional and aggressive use of land management, their original right to land, Zangberg true, that settled wild collectively, leaving behind a pristine wellness unless refused a little based in reality, native American life, and carefully not romantic people, rated people use fires for a number of reasons. Different reasons, notion of pre-contact wilderness has generally had no place here, burning as a negative, in fact, destroy trees, increase erosion, increase reduce acorns that dearly left their marks on North American landscape, control America, the even European rivals preceding wilderness. It is not a very powerful role of play fire police, city landscape, the native people, the first environmentalists, inaccurate, the mean the native Americans, turning them savages and capable of making aggressive use of the environment, thus unworthy of any rights to land in the first place. It's misleading, downright wrong to determine when European colonists encounter with exactly the short wilderness. The one is part and parcel of the instrumentalization of thoughts of French humans and manipulator of the environment. So many utilitarian nationality, painter, and moral and 15 in the building we put ourselves out with the position of manipulator, objects and employed and pursuit goals, and people thriving in relationality comes to habits and things that emerges. Do not calculate instrumentalism, sweep it under the carpet beyond your choices of decision. Mortality and calculating the interests of environmentalists insist that we protect nature to a little sense of less value. So something with Robson have wars rising close them, because this distance ourselves when allowing things to exist and thrive instead of forcing them to conform with something instrumental principle to replace this instrumental role of relation to the power to us abandon mastery, loss of mutuality, the recludes just sense of objectivity, experience, and content co-contamination of facts, environmental distortion, avoid war picture, less correct with the facts and figures, critique of only what we need to measure and what can be valued to the distance. Also, nature and NGOs only succeed groups speak to embeddedness in natural environments and liberal democracy. Exclude outcomes of existence that have no voice and be ecological because we are rational, who live in existence from our environment and operate according to rational calculation with every individual to know the relation networks and criminal argument. These are here the one is highlighting evidence. One is evidence that proves they cannot no link out of this argument. Their attack and their highlighting says that horses access ecosystem engineers and that guide society towards a sustainable future opportunity to reconnect nature with society. Nature is an ally in solving nature, so boundaries associated comments. The premise of their goal and the goal of the affirmative is the first human gains, even if process said otherwise. Consultation itself is the most innocent of this neo-colonial process. Snyder 22 caution against colonial scholar rate self activity regarding the implication of colonial power dynamics while maintaining the degressive political material power with current arrangement. Treasure toward the colonial idea articulable from indigenous voices. Consultation is not enough conservation efforts. Uphold colonial British power even if there's a purport that include indigenous productions. Here's line of the evidence that highlight they require constant tinkering, intervention into nature, ensure that the horses remain adequate Murphy 22 supply, feeding holding water population regulation if alternative horses go to slaughter. That away South Colonial destroy indigenous life forms because the ecosystem collapse, but decolonization solves the case. Moses 24. The people likely to know some rational thoughts. The examples of patriarchal religious shaping and indigenous culture separate human from nature. Addressing that ecosystem force clear to give over hunting. Partners are exterminated new species, introduce land claims that part of agriculture do want to global colonization was involved in rewilding. But this rewilding necessary to colonization powers also that they can become colonialism. So this is a mistrust built to value place on nature while nature can honor them our communities. Try to factor makes collapse and level to try to act for the alternative. Big felon 22 American. As one of our military and civil war creates authoritarian takeover general 6 special proposal. The big answer avenue and less capacity asking beyond control deliver devices dying for fascism. That side of danger pro that GOP got mounted co-opting exchange and planet since Mr. Balbas said Jemmy away from monopolar coming at our trust. The modernization and intellectual class mythology universal white built on the American dream and massive racial sameness and Richard fascism turns to theocracy through genocide of Christianity. Trump uses gospel wartime created the alternative. It's decolonized. This shows a halt to interlocking existential crisis. Hill 24 indigenous community resistant by starting stewardship. The lifeway practice ecology conserving for reinforcing generating sequestration to stabilize on the climate, but this constellation existential biology, loss, food, security, default, and desertification. Returning land and sharing with reverence and appreciate earth impacts represent key movements of elderly indigenous community community strengthen spiritual relations to upholding responsibility future generations, just towards homeland's vital ecocentral elites, like we reform connection to land, water, cares the land, proliferates care, address climate, first heal the soil, land, perpetuation, homeland, is then part interference, a kinship, it solves the app, and at all costs prove that they cannot solve. 1 AC collar $15. Terms condition requires survival beyond enter gap what's the colonial investment linked to core justification. My submission negate was not a competition. 1. Colonial domination just had debate is not just game, but a microcosm of the colonial war making gives invalid not response to civilization. The never war colonial research. 2. Federalization just had win case on the entry experiences, creating an escape path from all research because exchange always under their model of debate will always shut down the 200 episodes to index. They impact first repetition. New violence dynamics ensure having by neutralized repetition, but sanctioning solves my C22. New violence dynamics ensure more primitive stable, such as ignored smugly by schematics engaging. Some maintenance at sensing bugs systems of operating environments depend on social research into natural currents and ceremonies reactions. And with all the under more modified no logic dynamics, where you think control as well programs such as assessment of correct use and nudging. Or businesses rule should require habits of mind or community who will fail to behave that we sanction those who internalize those with decision that person made correct. So 3 scholarship, instructions, app, decolonization framework are necessary. 1 AC collar and L15 decol frameworks are necessary decolonization sensibility from scholarship. Their premise on just self-generation, not reading next to let's do a case. 1 AC color and then concedes the ontology, which means they cannot see right out of this. 1 AC color 15. That goes ongoing land mates, related property, into relationship, restrictions, relationship, and ongoing the property, fucking young. Transformation, land, and bodies, colonialism, all being based on extracting, assimilating, ritual colonialism. As always, starting from the indigenous now, and preempting the answer the next part here. Plato is wrong. First, we don't get to take land back. They only have to take back the first argument that's color. But regardless, this card said racism across the world isn't the same, but does not take out settler colonial structures. The there is indigenous suffering and ecological structures that's separate from all racism being the same. Now, the plan fails because it makes backlash likely density 23. Rewilding been partly presented. They have been perceived for regarding direct attack the livelihood with life and interpret this intent to remove people traditional farming characters of release spoiled species that may consider the capital concern stemming from deep held values to be started by people for centuries concerned about and have been aggravated promoting rewilding all intention projects have failed. The term used explicitly. They have been concerned that the movement is forced out of the local people. It's impossible to predict a positive relationship between rewilding ecosystem response. Norgate, Bravo, adult 16 method analysis for the full notion. Will you know the effects of predator? Herbivores on the ecosystem not the case. The effects of many ecosystem types and eventually and the concepts impact vary. Meta analysis hard to predict actually the essential difference between Peloton to when the tool oaks were out of complex and unpredictable change had occurred, but the app proliferates and then it consequence that turns the case no gate 15, 16, no around current meter on consequence disease pathogen when animals introduce bowel basin. If it data on us. Cool. Cut the card upon us.
River cross?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Alright, good? Alright, good. Topicality, what are the impacts to limits and ground?
You're not topical.
What is the impact? Why do limits and ground matter?
It's a burden question.
Why do limits and ground matter? I don't care
Well,
if
I
it's
guess
burden
limits and
question,
ground
why do
is,
limits and ground
limits and
matter?
ground is bad for our ability to debate in this space, i.e. I cannot reach good critique links and resolution, which is bad.
Why do you need good critique links?
Because I want to gauge my scholarship. Regardless, even if you think that it concludes fairness and clash outweighs, our argument is that racism itself outweighs fairness and clash, but fairness and clash are so, like, they could
So
be
the critique comes before the
But yeah,
topicality?
so set information outweighs fairness and clash.
So does the critique come before topicality?
Yes.
Okay, status of alternative?
Unconditional.
Okay, what does alternative look like?
Alternative look like it decolonizes the United States and across.
Is it fiated?
It is fiated. Like
Oh.
as for the app, as far as the app's fiated, the alternative is fiated. Yeah.
So you fiat everyone that's not the seller gets off the land.
Yeah, we fiat the return of land to indigenous people.
So does anyone leave the land?
Yeah, the land is returned to indigenous people. They get to decide.
So
if
do
to
you
stay on
leave the land?
Huh?
Do you leave the land?
Yeah.
Do settlers leave the land?
Yes.
Okay, great.
If indigenous people says the seller should leave the land, then they get to decide because it's their land.
So so it's up to the indigenous people if they want to determine if
Yeah,
settlers
well,
leave the
we
land?
returned land to that.
So how do you
indigenous people
determine
has
if
full authority.
indigenous people want settlers to leave the land? How do you
Well, I don't
determine
think it's a
that?
relevant question in this debate.
Wait, how do you determine that? I'm asking you. I don't care.
How do
Like,
you
I
determine
want,
that? Well,
how do you determine
indigenous
that? How does
people, if
alternative-
indigenous people says that we should, like, settlers should don't get off their land. That
Who
would
do
be
you
good.
ask? Which indigenous people do you ask? You ask everyone? Do you take a poll?
Well,
Do you like? Is it
Indigenous
democratic
people,
or is it like a
indigenous people
treaty
have their
and, like,
respective,
you just
indigenous people
force
have their
someone to sign?
respective lands and their settlements. And indigenous people have their respective lands and territories. Like each tribe on those territories gets to decide whether settlers should stay on those lands after we return the land. Which, yeah, like I don't get what this question is, and I don't
Okay.
get how it's relevant.
Okay, sure. The links, what word it?
First, the Durham evidence says that the app puts indigenous process on the back burner. The idea that we should have sale and reform through the Bureau of Land Management, as the one to see itself is colonial universalism that we critique. French evidence says the rewilding itself is a Trojan horse to greenwashing that where like corporate land grabbers will just use that as a tool to push
Isn't it the
people
status quo
off.
already that corporate land grabbers are already taking horses' lands and replacing them with livestock?
Yes, the affirmative intensifies that
How?
through rewilding.
How does that
because it pushes
intensify
up
that when we
indigenous
say?
people.
How does it intensify that when we say we back off?
The affirmative displaces indigenous people through
How-
rewilding of
Who do
forces.
you displace?
Indigenous people in those like
Who do we displace? Name a
Those-
tribe that we displace. Name
Well,
a tribe
you have
that affirmative
defended a
displaces.
territory. That
Name
is,
we have defended BLM tracts of land. Name a tribe that affirmative displaces.
well, those land itself do not belong to the federal government. That's our
Name
argument.
a tribe that affirmative displaces.
Well, I don't think that's our burden because we
Name
read
a
the
tribe.
affirmative.
You have
I
said you
obviously know
displace
the
a tribe.
affirmative less
I'm
than
asking
you.
you
I don't
which
know.
tribes do you displace.
I do not know. I don't know
what.
what tribes are in the affirmative area because I do not cut this affirmative. It's your burden to defend that, not mine. And
You have claimed that we displace tribes. Who do you displace? Who do we displace?
argument is that the logic of rewilding.
So you don't even know who exists on these lands, whose lands these actually are?
Well, I did not cut this affirmative. It's your burden to prove that you do not displace anyone. Argument is that rewilding empirically and across all instances has been split into people, which should be sufficient for a link argument.
Alright, great. Alright, 234 left. T case critique. Set in.
T in the top.
Yeah, T at the top. This is 70s, right? Alright. Yeah. Set. I'm gonna run through. Alright, David. Josh. Alright, Lucas.
Sorry,
Alright.
Wait, I'm good.
Alright, great. Counter-based affirmative specialized tracts of land. Substantial checks tiny affirmative based sure that they're large enough. Second is that generic check you can access things like the set cold critique. Also is key it's necessary to keep that flex and innovation. Otherwise it's just big debates over what actually is rewilding, which turns education all their office. Now case, although after herd management, rewilding will localized case by case of rewilding solves complex meaning interest between horses and ranchers are HMAs across the west African stewardship of land to indigenous people and impact is horse slaughter and tractor violence. Now the color that doesn't deny progress is possible. The state is inevitable says that colonialism may have impacts, but we can still change these impacts. Plato proves all causes like have urbanization are also drivers settler colonizing. That means the second is not too totalizing, but theory can't explain those things. Dempsey 23 about the UK, not the United States. Now look at Bravo 16 saying the saying size outweighs the indigenous voices is violent turns no arguments because indigenous people have practices that can resolve biology laws and saying that by science, white science shows that it resolves it is more violent, more settlers. Now to critique. First, to weigh the case against competitive alternative get links to website to play. A is fairness, actually skip fairness, B is clash, rigorous consultation proves quality, obviously false skill for real world. Also consequences are how we determine which representation is good. See you lose the bad, withdraw from object, 1% complicit, destroy the movements before leading system violence attack. Not aligned by that. They say colonial domination draw is irrelevant because we don't make balancing solve this. Now the federalization it says not the permanent because we don't have extinction impacts, but ignoring the process re-entrenches white liberalism when we say settler violence is okay if we because we don't actually because any try to attempt to stop it is violent because we don't get to the end goal. Now this is a racial petition, there's not a war or debate specific key war in this card. Now scholarship this is prerequisite, but it must be considered alongside other frameworks. 9 others is a settler version of silencing. Now say so no class action pack, but yes, there is because there aren't triple allows for you to get representation links. Now offense, A says colonial theory, plans, history, infiltration, rather colonization, explains all violence, career, 19, logical elimination, wolf discourse, colonial passive, true imperialist, charters, and destined corporation, rather elimination, first, never maintain America's empty, colonization by corporate, officially limited digital lands and volleyball, and digital country, within the conquer, no colonize, strategies, trade with the main driver of destructive IPO, and rather infiltration, rather, eliminating native silicon theory, will equip the complexity of mural incursion, country incursions, and now ontology is wrong, and first cycle is wrong, and falsifiability cycle, self-falsified can be tested on a case-by-case bias, same logic just like genetics, and eugenics is close for Darwinism, that's offense. B is explanatory power cycle is descriptive, not prescriptive, sure, and like for describing harm, but can't predict what affirmative would cause. Now, second is theoretically, A doesn't disprove, no, not just because violence exists does not mean it will always will. In Native American Graves Protection Recreation Act, bending XL pipeline, Agua Salento, Van versus Colito Valley District, Water District, all prove examples of progress that have happened. Now, third, perm do both, either alternative can overcome lakes plus a school, or can't overcome anything at all. A drop one is color, only combining smaller, world making projects can transform imperial violence. B is double-minded states, and not what they can't just wish to stay away with, leave violence intact, let several violence go unchecked. Now the low link, there's a reason why argue rewilding is uniquely bad. The two numbers way were worse than every other political project. A is that rewilding fosters new relations with nature, stops the extraction of public lands, that's first for future environmental policy, stops extractionism, and uniquely violent climate change. That Cold and Murphy both dropped. Now B is cooperates with local indigenous groups to legitimize sovereignty, stops the violence of public lands. Murphy dropped. Now the wilderness link is zero because our interpretation of rewilding resists notions of wilderness, great negative connotation, indigenous people just one easy Murphy, and also reason why reps are good drop. Now for NG22 is the status quo where wealthy landers already eradicate horses right now for sheep, and it's a try or die for affirmative to try to stop them from taking over land. Now the re-highlighting does not say anything or disprove that the affirmative intervention when we literally say we give up land to indigenous people, say you guys have stewardship of the land. Now Steiner 22 is incoherent when there are examples of indigenous groups who want to affirm it. We'll read them here, such as Kalila and the Mustang Heritage Alliance, the Sacred Way Sanctuary, Native American Horse Preservation Program. Now when Colord re-highlights prove the permit is 100%. Colord wants to save the horse and thinks that solutions are necessary from smaller steps, which justifies the permutation. Now zero explanation why stopping helicopter chases will lead to more violence. Rewilding Britain 25, rewilding release ecological process result of human ceasing to use which we're back to the ecosystem. Now the management link is wrong because of Murphy and Color were dropped that human nature are irreversibly tangled. It's a question of how we relate and engage with nature, not whether or not we should. Now it all fails. A is concrete localized solutions are key to all its use. We can't account for specific complexity. The ideal, non-ideal solutions can cooperate and neoliberal frames that fail. B cannot remove the state's zero explanation how the alternative can overcome Trump. Trump will literally just force some indigenous person to sign a treaty that says that he is actually indigenous, which he can't say, which zero's the alternative.
Cool. 4 minutes. Any good issues?
No.
Yeah.
The critique outweighs one of your job content or impacts, so you know that colonialism itself inevitably drives cultural destruction and genocidal warfare that outweighs their often large elimination was dropped, and the impact is largest just when genocide and people across planetary domain, which means that only the alternative cells are often second, and turns the case because they drop the colonialism itself inevitably escalates ecological disasters and separates human from nature, which means that it cannot achieve the allyship of human with horses, etc. So only the alternative cells are often remember the 1AC scholarship is premised upon the humans and animals being part and parcel with property with each other. That's impossible in the cell colonial world, because even if we don't want ontology, we have one that cell colonialism as a structure itself will never return itself to just like ecological interaction, infiltration, attraction, etc. All escalating ecological collapse turns affirmative. And turns are often now 1 year 1 framework. The 1 year framework says that weighing the case, they get that, but they drop that. But not that's the second part of our framework interpretation. That's that they don't get the link, they don't get a permutation. We never use a link to prefer this because that's key to scholarship. Their own evidence is decolonization for affirmative decolonization itself is necessary. Necessary for debate over their scholarship. So you know that our framework is necessary because their framework itself would mean that the affirmative always get away with permutation, double bind, etc. That's the side of the alternative because they can always just say, oh, the affirmative is just drop in the bucket. This logic itself is pathologizing and it turns all their offense because they themselves said decolonization. Decolonizing framework was the first and foremost thing that we put on the front, which means that winning a link is sufficient, alone is sufficient for you to strike the permutation and vote negative because we still have to make the case. It's just that we had an alternative which sells better. Now there was no defense, even if they said yes, sure. The answer was that yes, the prerequisite of the app would be sufficient for us, even if they said we must consider a lot of other frameworks. That's wrong because if the app framework itself is colonial, then as per our link argument, then you should not include the affirmative framework because we have proven that itself is inconsistent with their own role of valid about decolonization. Now, go to the offense first. Where evidence is wrong. This evidence just concedes ontology. This evidence does not assume ontology warrants and concedes says indigenous countries would never concord or not colonize. You strike this evidence. It's literally written by a racist that seek to deny colonization itself. It cannot answer many warrants. This is the main driver for colonialism is infiltration, not eliminating native. Sure, that's even if that's right. It's still the settler state itself still requires elimination of the private inhabitants of that land. So even if I thought for the United States to exist, it must eliminate indigenous people on that land because to maintain its territory. So even that we don't have that drive to eliminate native people, there's no defense or logical elimination offense that was dropped, and this evidence only index Wolf, not talking Yang or none of our other offense that was on case. So there's no zero verse for their ontology offense. Now ontology wrong, not going for psycho, but this does not prove any verse of offense for them because they dropped the ontology elimination offense from their own color behind that says that colonialism itself. The Muslim settler state to exist requires that elimination of private inhabitants of that land because the settler state itself requires the land that the United States settle on to exist, which shows that all their offense. Now examples not to real ontology. The examples are just moved in that returns into people some jurisdiction without returning the actual land to them. That's the same logic. The consultation link argument that we'll go for later. That's just that means the affirmative cannot decolonize the land, which itself means that they cannot permit the alternative. Now permutations do both. For an issue for this is that if the alternative solves the entirety of the case, then there's no risk. Then the risk of the link or distance permutation do both means to vote negative because the alternative is a better and more solid option. Now they say 180 color. This is wrong. This is relevant if we would ask war making project itself is violent. So even if you can combine war making projects, you never combine something that's violent to alternative because the alternative alone is better, regardless inclusion of the state itself dooms alternative because including the state itself means to stay with no strategy and crackdown, which means the crackdown is that better, and crackdown is that better, and then more than our alternative regardless. This argument also the constitution itself is paternalism, patronizing. Now the BLM to have jurisdiction over nation's land itself, which is the alternative rejects. So the permutation do both itself. Seavers are no alternative because the alternative rejects the BLM control of the land in the first place. So which Seavers severance of voting argument responsibility cannot get out of this because one year did not say anything besides permutation do both. Now double line is wrong. State is not inevitable, which will be answered on the alternative proper, but the app includes the state which zeros are offense and zeros which is stated. Also, yeah, the no link is wrong. Not going for the rest of the link. Those are all defense. And the app cooperation with indigenous groups itself is a link argument that was to see the extent of Snyder evidence. Consultation itself is insufficient, and consultation itself must seek to disrupt colonization. The app project itself is paternalizing, i.e., the settler state goes onto native land, says that what should we do with this land without actually returning the land to indigenous people. That itself the movement innocent that we critique in the first place. So it's dropped the link argument. The one year argument that indigenous people wants the plant. The only reason why indigenous people wants the plant in the status quo is because do you have the alternative decolonization, but the alternative would solve that. So even if indigenous people want the plant, they obviously want the alternative better, which was all their offense. Now the rest of the argument about they return the land to indigenous people. Remember cross-sects, they cannot see around this. Which is that the way they return the land to indigenous people itself is to consult them and ask what indigenous people want to put on their land. That's not returning the land to indigenous people because BLM still has jurisdiction to use the land. That's why the BLM gets to rewild those lands, because that they have authority to those land. That itself, even if you consult indigenous people over what the able to put on that land, it still is a colonial form of colonial instance that outweighs their offense. It means that the affirmative itself, the affirmative idea that's ceding the land back to the people is to ask them what to put on that land itself is an instance that you ought to reject because it's incompatible with the alternative assault. Entirely the case. Now the rest of the argument just goes away because I did not go for the rest of the argument. These things called ethics assault goes away. And all it fails is wrong. All assault entirely the case. For decolonization, we return land. We put to return land to indigenous stewardship. It has indigenous people marriage to the land. What sounds better? Drop every one and see evidence that says that the indigenous people has better relation to rewilding and a better ecological understanding than the affirmative, so they're better to work with horses, etc. Well, the solid state itself will inevitably kill all the horses and inevitably through ecosystem classes, etc. That targets the affirmative and targets the affirmative. Now, the all is A point is wrong. The all is a localized solution. Because we give land to each local community, preventing them from being co-opted by the new agents. B is wrong. We can remove the state. Two implications. One, Trump state collapse inevitable. That's the McFarlane evidence. Trump is authoritarian fascist. We take over. We never end with the plan, which I was their offense, and people are discontent in Trump administration. So they will join the alternative and revolt against Trump. Two is that fiat has the state. Because the state itself is forced to give up land to indigenous people. That might seem utopian, but when I made zero to your arguments, then their own cars have beyond utopian projects for decolonization is good, so zero to offense. Third, also, C point is wrong. No offense to thing because Trump will be removed from the land, even if it has no chance to stay on that land. Even if he claims to be indigenous, the indigenous people can still kick him off the land, which shows all the offense. And the Joe versus crackdown, remember, go to case, the framing issue, no offense, framing issue is that they cannot take back this legislation argument. That we have rehighlighted so there's no purpose offense to the movement, the racist, and constitution itself, the movement is. Remember, also things are the case. If the app project is bad, then do not raise any push to the app for the purpose or someone alone.
Great. But just kidding. Josh, great. Full after rewild her issue maze where we give up land to indigenous people and then to get off the land and stop chasing down horses with helicopters. This case was dropped into $200, which means it starts 100%. But now we'll go to critiques. First is affirmative debate. Conceded clash where we need test strategies. Now our representations are shaped by consequences. The way how we know things like representation are bad or good is based on the consequences of certain actions, which means you have to weigh the case versus their links. If we win that, now the framing is that they say no permutation for link, but we win the link turn and win some sort of offense against the link where there's the link is very low and the opposite in the direction of alternative, they should vote not the permutation because it proves that the app is in the direction. You should not vote in the direction. Now, first, we'll deal with ontology. First, drop a couple arguments. First, is the ontology descriptive, not prescriptive. It's sure it can describe things that historically happened, cannot explain violence in the future, cannot explain what that would cause, cannot explain no things that would happen in the future. Future state action center dropped argument. Second is 1AC Polito dropped again that it is not static and it cannot explain things like urbanization, capitalism, and industrialism. All other explanations of what settler violence actually looked like and how it drove settler violence, which means that settler colonialism is a faulty theory that cannot explain all of the theory, and it's rather too totalizing and fails, which means that the ontology is wrong, which also means that progress is all possible. And every explanation of 200 explains how historically it was bad, not that things in the future can never change, which means also says that fiat alternative proves that things are possible, and that fiat alternative justifies the permutation. Now, first we'll do the link debates. There's a couple link arguments that we're going to extend. First, the link debates. First is that the indigenous people want the plan. They concede examples such as the Guaca Mustang Heritage Group and the Sacred Way are all examples of where indigenous people want the plan. They say they want the alternative. Zero more done. Why indigenous people want the alternative for explanation? They not cite a single source. The institutions are heavily affirmative here that they want the plan more. Also drop that we foster new relations to nature. That was the Murphy evidence. Those first third link argument that's much more offensive here because it talks about how we foster new relations to nature instead of thinking nature as something that's subordinated by humans. We rather get off the land, and the app is a negative action, especially since they dropped the rewilding Britain definition that says the U.S. backs off and stops any sort of interaction or instead of trying to impact the land at all, and rather gives it up to indigenous people, which means it literally is decolonization. If it's not decolon, I don't know what is. When the United States federal government is literally BLM says we'll get off the land, stop interaction, and give the land back to indigenous people. Now they say the last argument, the only possible thing you vote on is cross-sex clarification, cross-sex argument, but that was only part of it. We say we consult them, but we also get off the land because we consult them on how we should stop getting off, we should stop chasing horses, how we can return the horses back to the land, etc. These are the parts of consultation, not which means that one AR clarification resolves this argument because we say that we can literally get off the land. How clear can I be when this is an alternative, the affirmative is literally decolonization. Now the permutation is 100% because the alternative is just decon. We literally say we get off the land. Now they say we cannot combine more violent stuff, at least the color card, but color card agrees affirmative. It talks about how we need to talk about both strategies. Both strategies within right now that are possible and in the hands, and also long-term strategies such as decolonization happens in the long run, but also short-term things such as the affirmative, which gave up land slowly and eventually give it all back. Now they say there's leads to more crackdown, but does not lead to more crackdown. There's not a war for it leads to more crackdown when the alternative gives it up, and then the alternative is also fiated and the affirmative gives up land. So it's literally just through the app, and then we get rid of all the other land back to this.
Wait.
In a bit.